Not the gentle kind of silence you hear on a calm night in the woods, but the suffocating, deadly hush of a world buried under snow. The wind had paused for only a heartbeat, but in that instant, I realized how far I had wandered from safety. My breath came out in shallow bursts, turning instantly into ice crystals that clung to my lashes. Every step was agony, boots soaked through, socks frozen stiff against my skin. I was only 12. Too young to be alone in the Alaskan mountains, yet here I was, swallowed by a storm that cared nothing for my age or my fear. The blizzard had risen so fast it felt like the world had vanished. One moment I'd been following what I thought was the trail back to camp. The next, the trail was gone, erased by white chaos that blurred the ground and sky into the same endless void. "Mom," my voice cracked, carried off by the wind. No answer. No figures in the distance. No sign of home. Panic gnawed at me. My hands had gone numb long ago, and the ache in my chest made every breath sharp, like glass cutting inside my lungs. I tried to remember what Dad once said on one of our hikes. "If you're lost, don't panic. Stay calm, look for shelter. Windbreak first, fire second." But there was no calm left in me. I stumbled through drifts that came up to my knees, each step heavier than the last. My legs felt like stone, my heartbeat slow and uneven. I could almost hear my mother's voice, faint and desperate in the storm. "Ethan, don't stop. Whatever you do, don't stop walking." Snow whipped against my face, stinging like 1,000 needles. I blinked hard, trying to clear my vision. And that was when I saw it. 2 glowing eyes. At first I thought it was a trick of the storm, reflections in the snow. But no, they were too steady, too alive. Yellow, piercing, watching me from the shadows of a drift that curved into the hillside. My heart slammed in my chest. A wolf. It stood just beyond a dark opening in the snow, half hidden beneath a tangle of roots and stone. A den. My brain screamed danger, but my frozen body whispered something else. Warmth, shelter, a chance. I fell to my knees, too weak to stand any longer. My voice was hoarse, barely audible over the howl of the wind. "Please, I don't want to die out here." The wolf didn't move. Its breath came in steady plumes, pale against the storm. Its ears twitched, its nose lifted, taking in my scent, sweat, fear, exhaustion. Every muscle under its thick gray coat was coiled tight, ready to strike if I dared move closer. I lowered my head, not in defiance but in surrender. I had no strength left to fight. All I had was the fragile hope that even in this brutal wilderness, mercy might exist. The storm screamed around us. Snow swallowed the world whole. The line between life and death thinned to nothing. And in that moment, crouched in the snow before the wolf's den, I realized my fate was no longer mine alone. The wind howled like a living thing, clawing at me, urging me to stay out in the open where death waited with frozen hands. But the dark hollow beneath the roots promised something else. A chance. A gamble. I crawled forward on hands that felt more like blocks of ice than flesh. The opening was small, barely wide enough for a boy my size, but large enough to house whatever predator lived inside. My heart hammered so hard I thought the wolf would hear it. Inside, the glow of those golden eyes did not blink. They fixed on me, steady and sharp, ancient as the wilderness itself. Every story I had ever heard about wolves flooded my mind. Hunters torn apart. Stray dogs ripped to pieces. "Never trust them," Dad once warned. "They'll gut you the moment you get too close." But Dad wasn't here. No one was. And the storm outside was already killing me. "Please," I whispered again, though my voice was nothing but a broken rasp. "Just let me stay, just for a while." The wolf shifted in the shadows. Its massive head lifted, ears pricked, nostrils flaring as it pulled my scent into its memory. I froze, bracing for the lunge, the flash of teeth. It didn't come. Instead, the animal lowered its head, muscles taut but still, as if weighing a decision that should never exist in the wild. Prey, or something else? I dragged myself closer. The snow beneath me crunched, the sound deafening in the stillness between us. My vision blurred. Black spots danced across the whiteness. If the wolf killed me now, I almost didn't care. At least it would be fast. But the dark hole smelled of earth, pine needles, and something warm, musk, fur, the scent of life. It was enough to pull me forward inch by inch until the storm at my back became muffled. The wolf's eyes followed every move. When I slipped past the threshold, I could feel the heat radiating from its body. Not much, but compared to the grave cold world outside, it was salvation. I curled against the far wall of the den, hugging my knees to my chest, shivering so violently that my teeth clattered like stones. The wolf never looked away. Its chest rose and fell in a rhythm so calm, so steady, it felt almost unnatural against the chaos raging outside. Minutes stretched into hours. I tried to keep my eyes open, terrified that if I slept, I would never wake again. Or worse, I would wake with fangs at my throat. Once, in the darkness, I thought I heard my mother's voice again. "Keep moving, Ethan. Don't give in." But I couldn't move anymore. The cold had already stolen most of me. A whimper escaped my lips, not of fear but of exhaustion. My eyes burned with tears that froze before they could fall. And then something shifted. The wolf moved, slow and silent, circling inside the den. My breath caught in my throat. I pressed back against the dirt wall, fingers clawing at roots, ready to scream, but the wolf didn't attack. Instead, it lay down across from me, head resting on its paws, eyes still locked on mine. It said nothing, but in that silence I felt the storm recede just a little. I closed my eyes. My last thought before sleep was not of teeth or blood, but of warmth. Would I wake alive in the morning? Or would the wolf decide differently before dawn? The storm outside roared, but inside the den, for the first time since I was lost, I felt the faintest thread of hope. The storm shrank to a muffled growl outside, like a monster pacing the door. Inside the den, the dark pressed close enough to taste damp soil, crushed pine, the warm, wild musk of the animal watching me. My shivering came in waves I couldn't control. Each tremor rattled my teeth and set a dull ache crawling up my spine. I told myself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Slow. Steady. It didn't help much. Cold has a way of making time limp. Every second feels like a minute. I rubbed my hands together until the skin burned. Needles of feeling stabbed my fingertips, painful but proof they were still mine. Across from me, the wolf lay with its head on its paws, eyes unblinking. A steady engine of inhale, exhale. I tried not to stare into its gaze for too long. Dad once said that's a challenge in dog language. Even if you don't mean it, they might. Wolves, he warned, were another language altogether. My socks were soaked through. I peeled them off with clumsy fingers and wrung them over the dirt. The cold air bit hard, but leaving wet cloth on would be worse. I wedged the socks near the packed earth wall, hoping the den's trapped body heat would do something. I rubbed my feet against my calves, then cupped each heel with both hands, grinding warmth into the skin. It wasn't much, but it was action, and action kept the dark from swallowing me whole. The wolf's ears twitched when I moved. Not a flinch. Just accounting. I kept my posture small, shoulders rounded, chin down. Every few breaths I murmured nothing words, soft, low, the way Mom talked to skittish horses at the trail barn near town. "Easy," I whispered, vapor lifting from my lips. "I'm not here to hurt you." The wolf didn't blink, didn't snarl. The only sound was the faint drag of its breath and the quiet scratch of claws as it adjusted a paw. Outside, the wind found its voice again, a long rising moan that made the den shiver. Snow packed harder against the entrance, dimming what little blue light seeped through. For a moment panic clawed up my throat. What if this seal's shut? What if there's no air? But I forced the thought down. I could feel the draft. Thin but present. The wild has its own kind of math. This den had outlived more winters than mine by far. My stomach cramped, sudden and deep. Hunger was a sharp, mean companion, worse now that I'd stopped moving. I swallowed and the taste of metal touched the back of my tongue. I thought of the granola bar I'd eaten hours ago, the last one, the way the chocolate had cracked along the oats. A cruel memory. I pressed a fist to my belly until the ache bent. I looked up. The wolf was closer. Not by much, a slow slide a few inches. But it had moved. Its chest rose under a coat that looked impossibly dense, winter thick. The fur at its shoulders was tipped with frost, little stars melting and reforming as it breathed. There was distance still between us, but not as much distance as a few breaths ago. "Okay," I said, voice a scrape. "Okay." I inched my back along the wall, not forward but sideways, giving it space even though space wasn't mine to give. The den was not big. If it chose to end this, there would be no warning I could outpace. Acceptance crawled over me like another layer of cold, oddly numbing, oddly steadying. I closed my eyes and listened. Inhale, exhale. When? Snow hiss. A branch cracking somewhere outside like a far-off gunshot. Inhale, exhale. Breath steadier than mine. Older. Be smaller than your fear, Mom liked to say. Name what you feel, then let it pass. Fear, I told myself. Hunger. Cold. A soft huff pulled my eyes open. The wolf's nose lifted, tasting the air between us as if scent could tell the difference between prey and a boy trying hard not to cry. Something in my chest broke then, not safety, not certainty, nothing I could hold. Just a thin thread of something like gratitude. I turned my hands, palms up on my knees. No sudden moves. No reaching. Just showing. This is all I have. The wolf's ears leaned forward. It didn't come any closer. But its eyes softened, not the shape exactly, but the way the gold seemed less like knives and more like embers. The den warmed by a degree you'd only measure with hope. Time slid. My shivering slowed to a restless tremor. I counted breaths until the numbers fell apart. Somewhere in that drifting, the dark bent into memory. We were on the ridge last fall before the first frost. Dad had packed too much for a half-day hike like he always did. Jerky, extra socks, a coil of paracord, 3 maps for one trail. The sky was scrubbed clean by wind, and the tundra burned red and gold. We stopped by an old fire ring to drink cocoa from a thermos that tasted faintly of metal no matter how many times Mom washed it. Dad crouched and drew a circle in the dirt with a stick. "Everything's about distance," he said, marking a dot for us and another for the woods. "Between you and the weather. Between you and a bad decision. Between you and a wild animal. You can't erase the distance, Ethan. You just learn how to read it. How to make it work for you." He looked up the ridge, where far below a black speck moved against the brush. "Respect is the bridge even when you're scared." I'd rolled my eyes then, pretending to be older than I was. But I'd watched the speck, aware and unafraid, and the way Dad's shoulders loosened when he trusted me to listen. The den returned when I blinked. Cold and the smell of damp earth. The wolf was still there. So was I. I don't know when I drifted near sleep. I'd jerk awake whenever a muscle spasmed or the wind found a new note. Each time, the wolf was a little different, head tilted, ear flicked. Once standing to recurl its body, slow and deliberate, as if letting me memorize each shape it might take in the dark. The next time I woke, heat brushed my shin like a low fire. The wolf had moved again. Close now. Not touching, but close enough that the space between us felt crowded with something that wasn't threat. I didn't dare look straight at it. Instead, I studied the shape of its ribs lifting and lowering. There was a scar along its flank, a pale seam just visible where fur parted. Old, healed, a story I would never know. The curve of its neck was a question mark in shadow. I let my head ease down the wall until packed earth cradled the skull ache gnawing my temples. "Thank you," I whispered. The words were small and embarrassingly human. They fogged the inch of air between us and vanished. If the wolf understood gratitude, it didn't show it the way people do. But I swear I heard a sound, almost a rumble, too low to be a growl, too soft to be warning. The sound a chest makes when it remembers being warm. My throat softened. The fear didn't go away, it rarely does, but it loosened its grip enough to make room for something else. I pulled my knees tighter, tucking my numb toes under my thighs. The trick, Dad said, was to protect the places blood forgets. Fingers, toes, ears. The trick, Mom said, was to forgive your body for being scared while you asked it to keep going. I must have slept, then, in shards. 5 breaths here, 10 there, because when the next loud thing happened, it was the kind of loud that doesn't come from weather. A crack, sharp and close. Not a tree this time. Ice shearing. The den shuddered. Snow sloughed at the entrance with a heavy hiss and a thump. I shot upright, heart frantic. The wolf was already on its feet, a shadow unfolding, head low, ears forward, body angled between me and the sound. It didn't snarl. It stood. A wall of muscle wrapped in winter. We waited. Nothing else fell. The draft at the mouth of the den thinned, then pushed again, steady as a sleeping breath. The wolf held its place until my pulse backed down from the edge. Then, step by slow step, it settled, this time a hand's breadth nearer than before. "Okay," I said again, less to the wolf than to the night. "Okay." The next time I woke, my socks were cold but not wet. I tugged them back on with clumsy thanks and flexed my feet until pins and needles chased feeling into my toes. The wolf lifted its head, watched, and let it fall. I tried to imagine explaining this to anyone. Dad with his flinty caution, Mom with her careful kindness, my friends who would want a monster story or none at all. There was no story yet. Just the fact of surviving in the same breath as something that could end you and didn't. I slid a little closer to the wall, testing the boundary of warmth without crossing it. The wolf didn't move. Its breath ghosted the space between us in steady clouds. I matched my breathing to its, not because I needed to, but because it was easier that way, like letting a river set your paddle rhythm. Minutes curled into a shape that wasn't quite sleep. I found myself counting textures to stay awake. Packed earth, shredded bark, one smooth stone near my hip. In the thin hush between gusts, I could hear things travel under the snow. A deep, low thrum from far off, the mountain's private language. The faintest scratch of something small tunneling out in the white. Life everywhere, even here. Somewhere I smiled. It felt strange on a face that had been all grit and ache for hours. When the den brightened, it wasn't dramatic. No burst of gold, no chorus of birds. Just the blue edge of dark softening by half a shade. Dawn thinking about it. The draft lifted and shifted cooler. The storm had turned from rage to work, still falling but steady now. The tantrum burned out. I pushed a palm against the dirt to lift myself. Every muscle argued. My body had stiffened around the cold, locked in against it, and now I had to negotiate an armistice. My head swam. I blinked until the den steadied and the wolf came back into focus. Up close, it wasn't a storybook creature. The fur around its muzzle was flecked with ice. One ear had a notch bitten clean through the rim. Its eyes, those impossible, unwavering eyes, landed on me, measured, and did not find a reason to change. We regarded each other in the kind of silence words would only cheapen. "Morning," I said anyway because I was human and humans name things to make them real. My voice was rough but mine. The wolf stood and turned toward the entrance. Snow blocked the lower half, leaving a crescent of pale light at the top. It stepped to the threshold, lifted its nose, and tasted a world I could not yet smell. It glanced back once, no human expression, no readable cue, but something about the way its shoulder angled felt like a question. "Can you?" I didn't answer out loud. I pushed myself up the wall, legs trembling, stomach hollow, heart stubborn. I could. And I would, because the night had given me two gifts I couldn't waste, time and trust. The wolf shifted aside an inch. Room for me to see the paling sky. Room for a choice. I swallowed, feeling the raw edge of thirst, of hunger, of fear. Then I nodded, to it, to the light, to the cold world waiting. "Let's try," I whispered. I didn't know then that this was the shape of the rest of it. Risk braided to mercy, step after step. I only knew the night had not taken me, and the morning was asking what I would do with that fact. The wolf breathed once, slow and fogged, and held its ground as if to say, "Then we go when you can stand." I planted my hands, found my balance, and got my feet under me. The den felt smaller now, but not because it had changed. Outside, the wind shifted again, and with it the smallest thread of brightness. Not warmth. Not yet. But enough. I reached for it. When the storm finally broke, it left the world sharpened and cruel. The sky was a pale blade, and the snow stretched endless in every direction, a desert of ice. I crawled out of the den behind the wolf, blinking into the brightness. My body protested every move. My feet were blocks of wood inside boots that squished and froze with every step. My hands shook even when I clenched them into fists. The wolf padded ahead, sinking barely half as deep into the drifts as I did. He moved with the ease of something born for this place, his paws spreading weight where mine only sank. Every so often he'd glance back, eyes catching the light like fire through amber. "Don't leave me," I whispered, though I knew he didn't understand English. Maybe he understood tone. Or maybe he just didn't care. Either way, he didn't leave. I stumbled after him, legs quivering. The air stabbed my throat, raw and clean. For the first few minutes, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd be okay. Then the fatigue hit like a wave. My knees buckled. I fell face first into a drift. Snow packed into my hood, down my collar, ice against bare skin. For a second I considered just staying there, letting the cold finish what it had started. It would be easy, no more walking, no more hurting. Just quiet. Something nudged my shoulder. I opened my eyes to see the wolf standing over me, breath pluming in the air, hot against my frozen cheek. He shoved me again, harder this time. Not a bite, not claws. Just force. A command, up. With a groan, I rolled onto my side and pushed myself upright. The wolf stepped back, waiting, eyes unreadable. I wanted to curse him, to say I couldn't, but then I remembered Dad's voice. One more step. Always one more. So I took it. And then another. Hours passed, or maybe only minutes. The cold bent time until I couldn't tell. My body was a machine of failing parts, powered only by stubbornness and the strange comfort of the gray shadow always just ahead. The first time I saw him hunt, it was like watching something half-ghost. He paused, nose low to the snow. Then, pounce. A sharp dive into the drift, a shake of the head, and when he lifted it again, something small and limp hung from his jaws. A vole frozen stiff. He patted back and dropped it at my feet. I stared stunned. My stomach twisted in disgust, but hunger was louder. I picked it up with shaking hands, gagged once, then forced myself to chew. The taste was bitter, metallic. I swallowed and it burned all the way down, but it was food. And it meant I could take another step. Thanks, I whispered hoarsely. The wolf just licked the blood from his muzzle and moved on. By late afternoon, the sky dimmed again, washed in gray. My limbs dragged heavier with each step. The wolf circled back more often now, sometimes pressing his flank against my legs to steady me when I stumbled. Once, when I collapsed to my knees, he tugged my sleeve with his teeth until I stood again. That was when I saw it. Far off, across the white plains, a thin thread of smoke climbing into the sky. A line of gray against the pale world. Oh. I stopped dead, heart pounding, staring. Could it be a cabin? A campfire? People? My chest ached with the urge to run, but my body couldn't. My legs trembled just from standing. I swayed where I was, dizzy with equal parts fear and relief. The wolf stopped too, following my gaze. His ears flicked, his breath fogging in long bursts. He didn't move toward it. He didn't move away. He just stood waiting. The message was clear. If I wanted to live, I had to keep going. I clenched my jaw, forcing my legs forward again. Step by step into the white. The wolf fell into stride beside me, our shadows stretching together across the frozen earth. And for the first time since I'd been lost, I believed I might see tomorrow. The smoke in the distance was like a thread pulling me forward. Every step hurt, but I clung to that thin line of gray rising into the sky. The thought of people, of fire, of voices, anything human, drove me. The wolf padded beside me now instead of ahead. Sometimes he surged forward, scouting, then circled back, brushing against my side to keep me moving. I no longer flinched when he touched me. His warmth was a crutch I leaned on without shame. The land tilted downward into a frozen creek bed. At first glance it looked solid, just another white scar across the snow. But the wolf stopped at the edge, ears sharp, nose low. He tested the ice with one paw, then backed away, a low growl curling from his chest. I should have listened. But desperation makes you careless. I thought if I cut across, it would save time, save strength. So I stepped out onto the ice. The crack was instant, a sound like glass shattering under my boots. Before I could retreat, the surface gave way. Cold swallowed me. Water like knives closed over my legs, sucking me down. I gasped, and the shock ripped the breath straight from my chest. My hands clawed at the jagged edges, but they broke, crumbling under my grip. The current tugged, eager to drag me beneath the ice sheet. Panic roared louder than the storm had. Then, movement. A blur of gray. The wolf lunged onto the bank, teeth snapping at my jacket. He caught fabric and pulled. My arms flailed, feet kicking uselessly. The cold was so deep it felt like fire. Please, please? I choked, though I wasn't sure if I begged the wolf or the world. With a violent jerk, he hauled backward. My chest slammed against the edge, ribs screaming, but I was out of the water. I scrambled, fingers numb, dragging myself onto the bank. My boots squelched, soaked through, heavy as anchors. I collapsed, coughing, my whole body shaking so hard I thought I might break apart. The wolf stood over me, chest heaving, eyes blazing. He growled, not at me but at the ice, at the hole where death had almost won. Then he nosed my shoulder, sharp, insistent. Mo, get up. I did, somehow. My clothes clung wet and frozen, turning stiff in the bitter air. I could barely bend my knees. But I staggered on because stopping wasn't an option. Not anymore. By late morning the sky turned white again, blinding in its emptiness. The snow reflected light so fiercely my eyes watered. Hunger gnawed at me, a constant hollow ache. My soaked clothes made every step a battle. And that was when the shadow passed overhead. I looked up and froze. A bald eagle wheeled in the sky, wings spanning wider than I was tall. Its cry split the silence, sharp and hungry. At first I thought it was coincidence. Then it circled lower and lower. Its eyes, black and merciless, fixed on me. The wolf saw it too. His hackles rose, a low rumble rolling from his chest. The bird folded its wings and dove. I threw my arms over my head. The eagle's talons raked the air inches from my scalp, the wind of its dive slamming into me. I stumbled, nearly falling. The wolf leapt, snapping at the bird's wing. Feathers scattered. The eagle shrieked, veered upward, circled again. Go away! I shouted, voice raw. I hurled a handful of snow. It fell harmlessly, but the wolf was already braced, teeth bared. The eagle dove again. This time the wolf met it midair, jaws clashing with a sound that made my blood ice over. The bird screeched, twisting away, one talon scraping the wolf's shoulder before it flapped skyward again. I watched, breathless, as it circled once more, then finally broke off, retreating to the horizon with a final, furious cry. Silence returned. My heart hammered like a drum in my throat. The wolf shook snow from his fur, licking the shallow scratch at his shoulder. He looked at me, and for the first time I didn't see just a predator. I saw something else. A guardian. Without him I'd already be dead. Twice over. I sank to my knees, tears burning hot despite the cold. Thank you, I whispered. The words felt too small for what I meant. The wolf just stood there, chest rising and falling, watching me with those ember eyes. And for the first time since I'd been lost, I didn't feel completely alone. By the time we crested the ridge, my legs were trembling so badly they barely held me. Hunger had hollowed me out, thirst burned like fire in my throat, and the cold gnawed my bones with every step. But then I saw it. Beyond the drifted valley, smoke rose in dark ribbons against the pale sky. Not just one thin thread this time. Several. A camp. Maybe even a village. I froze, breath caught in my chest. My heart slammed against my ribs. People. Fire. Shelter. Home. The wolf stopped too, ears twitching, gaze fixed on the horizon. He didn't look at me right away. He only stood there as if sensing my racing thoughts. I made it, I whispered, voice hoarse. My lips cracked when I smiled, the first real smile since the storm began. The wolf turned then, eyes meeting mine. And in that instant joy turned sharp, because I understood what it meant. People meant safety, for me. But for him? A rifle, a trap, fear disguised as protection. My chest tightened. They won't understand, I said aloud, though the wind tore the words away. Not like I do. We made our way down slowly, step by step. My body failed me more with every stride, but I forced myself on. The wolf kept pace, circling when I stumbled, pushing against my side when I sagged. His presence was a rope pulling me through the exhaustion. By the time the first tents came into view, the world blurred around the edges. I heard voices, human voices, carried on the breeze. Laughter, shouts, the clang of metal against metal. Sounds so ordinary they felt like a miracle. I staggered forward, my throat tight. My eyes burned. But when I turned to the wolf, he had stopped. He stood a dozen yards back, framed against the white. So silent. his breath plumed in slow, heavy bursts. The snow clung to his fur in patches, his shoulders dusted in frost. "No," I whispered. I tried to step back toward him, but my knees buckled. I nearly fell. "Don't leave." He didn't move closer. He only watched. I took one shaking step, then another. My body begged to collapse, but I couldn't, not while those golden eyes held me. "Please," I said, tears breaking hot down my face. "Come with me." The wolf tilted his head, ears twitching. Then, slow as the mountain itself, he lowered his head and took a single step forward. He pressed his nose once, firmly, against my shoulder, just enough to jolt me upright. And then he turned. He loped into the trees, silent, a gray ghost vanishing into the endless white. "No." My voice cracked. I lurched after him, but my legs gave out. I crashed into the snow, too weak to rise. The world spun. Voices shouted, "Closer now." Boots thudded. Hands grabbed me, lifted me, wrapped me in blankets that smelled of smoke and wool. "He's alive," someone cried. "We've got him." Faces blurred above me. Warmth pressed in from all sides. A tin cup touched my lips, hot broth spilling into my mouth. My body drank before my mind could. But my eyes searched the tree line, desperate. And just before the dark claimed me, I thought I saw them. Two golden sparks between the branches, watching. Then gone. The warmth of the rescue camp should have been heaven. Fires burned high in barrels, tents glowed with lanterns, and voices filled the night with comfort. Hands held me, wrapped me in blankets, pressed steaming mugs against my lips. But no amount of heat touched the place inside me that had gone cold when the wolf disappeared into the trees. For the first time in days, I slept in a real bed, a cot lined with wool blankets. I ate stew thick with potatoes and venison. People praised me, called me a miracle, said I was strong and lucky. Parents hugged their children tighter when they saw me, as if I were proof that sometimes fate could be kind. I smiled when they looked. I nodded when they asked. I gave them pieces of the story that sounded safe. I was lost in the storm, I found shelter, I survived. But the truth stayed behind my teeth. How could I tell them? That a wolf, an animal they feared, an enemy they'd hunted for generations, had saved me, fed me, warmed me, guarded me when I was too weak to stand? If I spoke it, they'd laugh. Or worse, they'd listen and then decide the wolf needed to be destroyed before it came near the camp again. So I kept it, a secret like an ember pressed into my chest. When my parents finally arrived, faces streaked with tears, arms crushing me against them, I thought I'd feel whole again. But even in their embrace, my eyes searched the treeline, waiting for a flash of gray fur, a glint of gold eyes. He wasn't there. Back home, life tried to resume its shape. School, chores, the chatter of neighbors who whispered about my miracle survival. Children in town looked at me differently now, some with awe, some with suspicion. A few called me Wolf Boy in the schoolyard. I laughed with them, pretended it was just a joke. But inside, the name felt like truth. At night, I lay awake, the ceiling above me strange and suffocating. I missed the packed earth of the den, the wild smell of pine needles and musk. I missed the steady sound of his breathing in the dark. Most of all, I missed not being alone. Spring crept over the land. Snow shrank into rivulets that hissed under the sun, green shoots piercing through the thaw. With the season came rumors, sheep taken in the night, prints in the mud too large to be dogs. Men gathered in corners, voices low and sharp. Wolves, they said. Too close. Too many. Traps were set. Rifles polished. The fear of hunger turned to anger, and anger turned to plans for a hunt. Each word twisted in my chest like a blade, because I knew whose prints they might be. I knew who had prowled close enough to smell the smoke of the camp, to make sure I was alive. I couldn't let them find him. But I was only a boy, small against the tide of grown men with guns and fear in their eyes. I had no power, no voice loud enough to stop them. Still, I had something. A bond forged in ice and hunger, in nights where survival depended on trust no one else could understand. And I knew one thing with certainty, the story wasn't finished. The village gathered before dawn. Breath smoked from men's mouths, lanterns swung like fiery eyes, and the sound of rifles being loaded cracked through the stillness. I stood among them, smaller, invisible. My father's hand rested heavy on my shoulder, proud and grim. He thought he was protecting me by bringing me along, to teach me what it meant to defend our home. But every step deeper into the forest felt like betrayal. The snow was sharp beneath our boots, crust breaking with each stride. Dogs pulled on their leashes, noses pressed to the ground. Their growls vibrated in my bones. "Tracks," one man muttered, pointing at a line pressed into the white. Huge, heavy prints. My chest clenched. I knew them like I knew my own heartbeat. The hunt surged forward. Voices rose, rifles lifted, dogs lunged. I wanted to scream, to tell them all to stop. But fear sealed my throat. If I cried out, they'd know. They'd look at me with suspicion, ask why I defended the very beast they hunted. And then, it would be over for him. We moved deeper, the forest closing around us like a cage. The prints grew fresher. The men grew tense. Any moment, I knew they would see him. And then, through the trees, I saw him first. A shadow of gray and muscle, standing still against the snow. His eyes found mine, golden and burning. Time stopped. The world shrank until it was only him and me, the silence between us louder than the shouts of men. I felt everything in that gaze. Recognition, trust, the bond that had kept me alive. He was waiting, for me. Then the crack of a rifle shattered the air. The shot went wide, exploding bark from a tree near his flank. He bolted, silent and swift, the forest swallowing him whole. After him, the men roared. The dogs lunged, straining at their leashes, teeth snapping. I ran too, not with them but between. Branches whipped my face, snow clawed at my legs. My heart thundered. I didn't know what I would do, only that I couldn't let them end him. The chase stretched into eternity. Shouts scattered through the forest, dogs bayed, gunshots cracked like lightning. But I followed only one trail, the one I knew by heart. At last, I burst into a clearing. And there he was. The wolf stood at the far edge, chest heaving, eyes fixed on me. Behind me, the men's voices drew closer. The line of trees behind him promised escape, but only if I gave him time. My legs trembled. My throat burned. And for the first time, I found my voice. Stop. The word tore out of me raw and desperate. It ripped through the trees like a shot louder than any rifle. The forest went silent. Men stumbled into the clearing behind me, rifles raised, eyes narrowed. My father's voice cut sharp. Son, move. But I didn't move. I stood there, small and shaking, between the rifles and the wolf. He didn't run. He just watched me, calm, waiting as if he knew the choice was mine. And in that moment I realized, this wasn't only a hunt for him. It was a hunt for me too. For who I was. For which world I belonged to. The clearing held its breath. Men fanned out behind me, boots crunching in the snow, rifles gleaming dull in the pale light. The dogs snarled and lunged, their chains rattling like iron thunder. And I, just a boy, stood in the middle, my chest heaving, my arms spread wide as if I could hold back the storm. Move aside, my father barked. His voice cracked with anger, but beneath it I heard fear. Fear for me. Fear of what he didn't understand. I shook my head. My throat was raw, but my voice came steady. No, you'll have to shoot through me. The words silenced everything. Even the dogs froze. The men stared, faces hard and disbelieving. My father's eyes burned into me, searching for weakness, for hesitation. But I gave him none. Behind me the wolf stood still. Not a sound, not a step. His breath rose in clouds, his golden eyes locked on mine. He was waiting for my choice. Another man muttered, "The boy's bewitched." "No," I said. "He saved me. You think he's a monster, but without him, I'd be dead. He's not the enemy." The men shifted uneasily. Fingers hovered near triggers. The forest itself seemed to lean closer, waiting. My father's jaw tightened. He lifted his rifle, hands trembling, aimed past me. My heart stopped. And then the wolf did something none of them expected. He lowered his head. Not in fear, but in acknowledgement. A silent bow as if to say, "You've chosen. Now let me go." I stepped aside, slow, deliberate. The men gasped. The wolf's eyes lingered on me one last time, glowing like embers in the snow. Then he turned and melted into the trees, a shadow swallowed by the wilderness. No shot followed. No man moved. Even my father lowered his rifle, his face pale and unreadable. The clearing emptied, voices hushed, rifles heavy at their sides. But something in their eyes had changed. Perhaps they saw what I saw. Or perhaps they feared it too much to speak. That night, I sat alone outside our cabin, staring at the tree-line. The forest whispered, alive with secrets. Somewhere out there he walked free. And though I never saw him again, I felt him always watching, guarding, teaching me that survival isn't only about fire and food. It's about loyalty, about trust, about choosing who you stand beside when the world demands you turn away. Even now, when winter winds howl and the snow glitters under the moon, I swear I can feel his eyes, golden and steady, burning through the dark. And I know, a part of me still runs with him. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and tell us in the comments what you felt. Your words inspire us to create more.